All right, everybody. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. My name is Angela Abreu, and I'm the founder of Dominican Writers Association. We are a 501c3 literary arts organization with the mission to highlight the works of Dominican American authors and offer them the resources they need to publish their work. Tonight, we are here celebrating the first day of Hispanic History Month or Latinx month or Latine month, however you want to call it, but we celebrate it every day, so it's no big deal to us. So it's a big deal to everybody else, but I'm here highlighting our people every single day. So thank you for being here. I am going to give it away to Yamberlie. You're on mute, Yamberlie.
My bad. I'm gonna get used to it. Don't worry. Okay. Hi. Welcome everyone to the live reading of Dominican Moms Be Like. I'm Yamberlie Tavarez, managing editor of DWA Cuenticos. And if you're just now getting acquainted with the project, it came about with a discussion between Angie and me about creating a call for submissions on the Dominican Writers page. One that mirrors our experiences and showcases our culture. Basically representation. We wanted stories by our writers describing our culture, our experiences. So, okay. And let me just say, Dominican Moms Be Like is that book. Because all the essays are super unique, but I promise you that when you read them, it's going to hit home one way or another. You're going to hear your own mom in your head. So, okay. So before we introduce the writers and contributors, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Coilan Gomez. She was a contributor from the previous chapbook, our first one, La Doña, and she let us use one of her awesome poems to introduce this new chapbook. So thank you for that, Coilan, if you're watching. And also shout out to Angie, because let me just say, this book design, she did it, and I'm going to frame it. I'm going to frame this Conticos because it's so beautiful. So yeah, thank you, Angie, for that. Okay, and now let me introduce each of the writers, very patient writers that were so open to suggestions throughout the whole back and forth of the editing process. Let me start off with Amaris. Amaris is not here, but we're going to show a little video of her reading her essay later. Okay, so Amaris Castillo is a journalist and the creator of Bodega Stories, a series featuring real stories from the corner store. Born in Brooklyn, New York, to Dominican parents, she credits the many tales she heard growing up to her love for storytelling. Amaris' writing has appeared in the New York Times, Remezcla, Latin Magazine, and Parents Latina. You can catch her writing from her home office or just a few steps away from her windowsill, lined with her muñecas sin rostro. Those dolls creep me out. Okay, next is Angelina. Hi, Angelina. Angelina Altagracia Vargas is an Afro-Dominican storyteller, educator, and agent of change from the Bronx. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Critical Foundations of Education and a Bachelor of Arts in Women and Gender Studies from Syracuse University. Angelina received a Master of Science in Education in Bilingual Childhood Education from the City College of New York. She is pursuing her PhD in Urban Education at the University of Maryland. When she's not reading or making cooking videos, you can find her traveling around the world or studying at a nearby cafe. Cindy. Hi, Cindy. Cindy Burgos is a first-generation Dominican-American storyteller and writer. She is the creator of a blog called SPL 10. Did I say it right?
Pronounced split ends.
Wow, I've been saying it wrong in my head this whole time.
All good.
Split ends. That's her thing. Okay, my bad. She is the creator of a blog called Split Ends that reflects on and unpacks bicultural experience through the through the lens of identity, generational trauma, healing, motherhood, and more. Originally from New York City's Little Dominican Republic, Washington Heights, she resides in Atlanta, Georgia with her husband and daughter. Henry Suarez. He is a Dominican-American writer born and raised in Corona, Queens. He now resides in Westchester, New York, with his wife and daughters. His writing focuses mainly on the immigrant experience, growing up bicultural, bilingual, and his journey through fatherhood. Luz Maria Mack. Luz isn't here, but we're also going to be showing a video of her reading her essay. Okay. Luz Maria Mack was born in Villamella, Dominican Republic, and immigrated to the United States as a young child with her family. She comes from a big, loving family that is a recipe for laughter and many beautiful memories. Luz earned a master's degree in public administration from Metropolitan College of New York and worked as a healthcare professional. Mauricio Castillo. He was born and raised in Queens, New York, a first-generation Dominican American by way of Bonao, Dominican Republic. His first love is and always will be fiction and creative writing. He was published at 18 and never looked back. He enjoys music, film, food, fitness, beer, and sounds deep conversations that he's not trying and failing to write. When he's not trying and failing to write the next great vampire novel. He is the current senior editor of fantasy sports content at Yahoo Sports. Okay, welcome all our contributors. Angie, you want to start with Amari's video? I want us all to like read, and then later on we can do the questions and discussions.
Yes, I could do that. So let me share the screen. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amaris Castillo. I'm a writer and journalist based in Florida, as well as one of the contributors of Dominican Moms Be Like chapbook. I want to thank Yamberlie and Angie for letting me be a part of this project and to also read my piece, even though I was unable to make it to the live event tonight. This is Reflection. Hypocrisy lodged somewhere between our mother's lungs and arms. We recognized it early on. As niñas, we are told by our Dominican moms, no le preste atención a lo que diga la gente. Those people don't know you. We're your best friends, the ones who count, not these amiguitas. We're your mothers. It takes time for young minds to emerge from this fog, this string of stern reminders. But us niñas eventually picked up on the shifts, the irony lapping at our feet like waves crashing. Before any guests came over, nuestras madres sprang into action. They'd sweep every crevice of their apartments and plunge their worn mops into buckets of scalding water to coat the linoleum floors until all rooms smelled of lavender mistolin. They'd wipe the dining table, even if it would later be covered in cloth. Not the cheap vinyl of everyday use, but the fancy tablecloths with the cutout embroidered edges. They would clean so that their hands turned into soaked raisins and then yell at us to pick up a rag to contribute. Then they earned accidental burns to their hands while cooking furiously. It became apparent that our Dominican moms did indeed care about what others thought of them. We knew this by how they moved, how they arranged pillows on the couch just so, how they tinkered with their ceramic elephants and angels, delicate like their self-image. Their reputations and pride hinged on how well they took care of the spaces they called home. What would our guests say if they walked into a dirty house? Our madres would say. Everything must be immaculate, orderly, clean, just as our Dominican mothers had been taught in their native homeland by their Dominican mothers, who were taught by their mothers. As niñas, nuestras madres and their own madres were told that a respectable and honorable woman always keeps her house in order in case of an unannounced visita, of which there have been many. Stay consistent, and you'd never have to worry about your ears ringing someday. We scoffed at our mothers and eventually grew into young women, unaware that this yearning for appearances had settled deep, deep, deep inside our core. We told ourselves we were different. But in the hours before a visitor's arrival, we former niñas clean our house feverishly, maniacally. We sweep, mop, and scrub till our lower backs pulsate and ache. We worry about dust particles that may or may not have been left undetected on the kitchen table or bathroom sink and how they'd be perceived. Would we be thought of as indecent? Una mujer who can't take care of her home, much less herself. So we continue, and we spray Windex on our mirrors and wipe, wipe, wipe until the reflection shows just who we are. Thank you.
Aw, that was great.
No, for real. But like the first line just got me. Like I was like, yeah, this one's going in there because it's so short. But tell me you don't feel like it's you, right? Like tell me you don't feel like it's like your mother. Ay, la visita viene. Limpia la casa. And this one also made me feel like I'm literally becoming my mother. I'm like, wait, where's the Windex? We gotta make sure it's perfect. But yeah, okay. You guys can comment on it after. I want to keep reading and then we'll come back to each one, okay? I just want to say like, wow. Okay. So next is Angelina.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to read from the middle towards the end. And before I start reading, I just want to share the title and then like why I decided to go with the phrase that I decided to choose. So a comer se ha dicho, phrases Dominican mothers feed their Dominican York children. So I come from a matriarchal family, and so both my mother and aunts helped raise me. And it was so hard trying like to choose like one specific thing that they said, because it just says so many things every single day. And I decided to go with the one that I wrote about, which was centered around food. Okay, and I'm reading from page 11 to 13, by the way. Food has always been a communal element in my family, in every season of our lives. In Nueva York, these seasons are rough too. That vengan niños was the best thing we could hear because it meant that, yes, we will be eating today, despite the poverty and how mala la cosas están. That vengan niños would hit so hard those sleepover nights. It was a melody to my cousins and my ears. My mom and aunts would feed us dumplings con hot dogs or salami, espaguetis con pan, o los tres golpes, all food que rinden, like they would say. There were also words we anticipated hearing outside the house because although those words originated inside our 2-bedroom apartment, they had no static settings. They would transcend physical space and travel to amusement parks, church trips, school events, and Claremont Park in the Bronx. Barbecues and block parties would always feed the whole block. Again, everybody eats, beat. Me, ma, tengo hambre. Mami, pues bebe agua. Words I miss now more than ever. They've now turned into me. Mami, ¿tiene hambre? Voy a comprar comida. Mami, sí, pero no te preocupes, que yo pongo un arroz a hervir ahí y después averigua la compañía. Something about those words make me sad and nostalgic because despite us, los muchachos, growing up and earning an income, the things we made out of poverty just feels wholesome. Latching on to the aspirations of better days was enough. Better days that now don't seem as glamorous as we had imagined on those cold winter days, when we would whip out the pan italianos con un chocolatón as our best resort to staying warm. Now it's just us ordering food for delivery from our phones and growing frustrated because they messed up our orders yet another time. It's not the same, just as Willie Colon and Héctor Lavoe warned us, todo tiene su final. Times change and we all grow up, but I will forever be grateful for how Dominican moms be like, barriga llena, corazón contento. I think that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard my mom and aunts say. It signifies the joy food gives us. These words speak for all the time we told our mothers we were hungry, and they, no matter what, with something out for us despite the circumstances. The end.
Thank you. Ya me dio hambre. Your whole essay, I was just thinking about food the whole time, but then it's like also like they do want to just feed everybody. You kept saying everybody eats, be like everybody's gonna eat no matter what. If there's a Dominican mom around, you're gonna get fed. Thank you for that. Okay, Cindy, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. This was one of the hardest pieces I've ever had to write, because how do you almost like encapsulate your mother and the years of experiences into one piece is, yeah, I had a really difficult time, but once it was finished, it felt like I stood back and was looking at a masterpiece in a really weird way. Like, that's my mother. That is true to who she is. Banda de chismosas. Oye, muchachita, tú no llamas, she says, skipping past the pleasantries to make her complaint known. It had only been 48 hours since our last call, but for Mami, the silence was deafening. Audacious of me to skip a session with her. The decision is inexcusable, yet I continue to justify myself in anticipation of the comedic exchange. Our conversations open in a string of lighthearted insults, a love language she and I share. She sprinkles in a common plight, pero llámame para saber que estás viva, just before initiating the latest session of story time, detailing the adventures that make Ada's life a full one. Doña Ada, as I lovingly refer to her, is a loud, raspy-voiced woman bursting at the seams with wit, tales, and laughter, her antidote to life's woes. She swears that limoncillos were responsible for her lack of a whisper to this day. However, given her presence in our community, her volume is a gift of divine intervention. She wields her words to counsel and encourage her tribe through story, never one to withhold her love. It is this sacred exchange that makes every one of our conversations unique. Proceeding with a request that needs no permission, she begins her stories with déjame decirte, priming my heart for the lessons, elaborating in detail and stroking a blank canvas in context. I find my spirit transported to her dining table, seated before a spread of all my favorites, tostones, asopao de camarones, una limonada fresca o copita de vino, a sip here, a sip there, and suddenly I'm immersed in familiar ancestral tradition. Whether the experience she divulges is profound or not, she calls it una bobería. Yet diligently I cling to her every word, allowing them to send waves through my core. With laughter I am home, with every nugget of wisdom I am grounded. I see more of her revealed with every story shared. Gratitude, regrets, joy, and longing. At the end of it all, my love abounds, and so does my desire for healing. Ya te dejo que tú eres muy chismosa, she says, to which I quip, y tú la reina de los chismosos. Gracias, mija, she responds, offended but accepting. Our exchange is sealed and passed on for the next generation to relish, turning experiences that would have otherwise crushed her spirit into nostalgic bites of relayed and reframed celebration. Her stories are an invitation to a practice in gratitude, a call to embrace the challenges instead of bracing. It is among the sweetest gifts she's imparted over me. And while chismosa is far from an inherited quality, she leverages the insult to keep me in suspense until our next session.
Wow. Wow. The way you read it, I was getting emotional. My goodness. I feel like I know your mother now. I'm going to be part of your banda, by the way. Pick me up next time in the next phone call.
We all have a family member like that. All of them.
And God forbid you don't answer your phone. No, they're going to call like at least 50 times until you pick up.
Así mismo.
Llama a la policía de una vez. I thought something happened to you. I loved it. Thank you for that. Who's next? Let me see. Henry. Henry, you're getting pretty popular with these chapbooks. It's like, I think for all the cuenticos, I think you've submitted something for each one. I just recognize your name now everywhere.
Ya yo toqué en Palago. So, I wrote this, my mom is very playful and she loves, she's good about taking jokes. And so, I always pester her, como que ella siempre anda arriba de uno. She is very, very close to my brothers and I. And one of the things that's funny is that my dad, all he ever talks about is going back to DR. But my mom would never dream about moving out there. She's like, no, mira, yo me quedo aquí con mis hijos. So I figure we play on that and, recount some of the things that she's done to be a Dominican mom. But here we go. Mira, ahí estaba llamando una tal Karina. ¿Quién es esta muchachita? Una niña de mi clase, mami. Bueno, más te vale que te ponga para tu estudio. Deja tranquilo a esa niña. Coming home from playing football, this is how Mommy greeted me at the door. As the mother of 3 boys, she was always suspicious anytime a girl would call the house. In this case, Karina was calling about a group project. Still, it immediately put Mommy on high alert. She would threaten us with a pela if we got a girl pregnant. Our hypothetical girlfriend would also get a pela. She assumed the task of punishing both of us in this theoretical teen pregnancy. The first time I brought a girl home, she and my dad were friendly enough. They had her over for dinner and enjoyed some small talk. They then read me a sermon about not allowing this relationship to affect my grades when she left. Grades that were not that good to begin with. But I guess they wanted to make any point they could. Mommy followed it up with a one-liner the next day before leaving for work. Mira, mucho cuidado lo que tú andas haciendo con esa noviecita. She's very protective of her boys. She takes personal offense if we say something negative about ourselves, as though it reflects poorly on what she's done as a parent. Worst of all is when my brothers and I fight, or if we aren't speaking for any reason. You see it in her eyes, the pain of her babies being offended by another one of her babies. All she says is, mis hijos, los hermanos hay que cuidarlo. One thing that can't be denied is that she throws down in the kitchen. Growing up, our house was the go-to place. We always seemed to have some hungry-ass friends more than happy to come over for a bowl of whatever Mommy was cooking. My dad would always complain about the noise level, especially when he was trying to take an after-work nap. To Mommy, though, having a house full of kids always seemed to bring her joy. Even if we came over with more kids than there was food for, she would quickly whip up some more food or pull out the leftovers. Mommy's the type that cooks extra just because, so there's always leftover food. Pa que falte que sobre. The thought of letting a kid go hungry was upsetting to her. It's a must that everyone leaves the house with their stomach on the verge of exploding. The plates that she puts out for people are ridiculous. It's a mountain of rice and like a half a pot of beans. This seemed like the best of both worlds because it allowed us to hang out and she could rest easy knowing we were safe. She's a worrier by nature. She constantly worries about where we are and whom we are with. She never liked the idea of us spending time in other people's homes. Uno no sabe de lo que son capaz la otra gente. By that logic, wouldn't other parents wonder what went on in our house? Hanging out in front of our building, the night would constantly be interrupted by the creaking sound of our bedroom window, followed by, Henry, Ariel, ya, suba. One night she popped her head out the window exclaiming, mis hijos, ya son la 1:30, suban que es un día de semana. We were already teenagers at the time, and it was during summer break, but either way, that time didn't seem accurate. I replied, Mami, mueva el reloj y mire la hora de nuevo. Bueno, las 11:30 no son horas de estar en la calle. Suban. There was no arguing at that point. We had to head upstairs. Arriving home late at night and usually drunk, we could see her as we came through the door. Standing in the kitchen doorway in her bata, she'd start the interrogation, asked if we were drunk, telling us to go wash off the smell of aroma. She's the type that won't fall asleep until the last one of us arrives. I'd be out partying and get a text from her, mi hijo, ya, ven a tu casa. A grown man getting text from his mom about when I'm coming home. Serves me right for living there until my mid-20s. Like any typical kid, I would find some of her ways to be overbearing. Now that I'm a parent, I have a greater appreciation for what she was going through. You want to ensure that your family is safe. There's no greater duty. Much of what goes into my mother's parenting method comes from the void she felt as a child. The attention and the care she provided us was what she longed for. Had she gone out at night, there likely wouldn't be anyone worrying about her whereabouts. Meanwhile, she was unable to sleep until we made it home safely. As is often the case in DR, Mami wasn't raised by her parents. Mira, muchacho, yo andaba de casa en casa, como una etcétera. At 12, she arrived at the home of my grandmother's sister. This aunt and her husband helped her helped her to retrieve her birth certificate and enrolled her in school. As she recalls, ahí fue que yo por fin vi la gloria. Mami, a reference book for refranes, has one for almost every occasion. She discourages late night snacking with, como lo que va a comer ahora y cierra con broche de oro. When we look messy, tú pareces una gallina, mata cobazo. If we did things without permission, we'd hear, ustedes andan por ahí como los chivos sin ley. If she finds something to be overhyped or lackluster, she says, eso es mala sal que el chivo. She loves to say, yo me hice la chiva loca, to describe when she's played dumb or feigned ignorance. Goats seem to make for great use in phrases. I've battled weight issues my entire life, and Mami's the first to say, hijo, tú tienes que rebajar un poco. And I'll mention that I'm skipping dinner to do some intermittent fasting. She's then worried, pero no es pasar hambre tampoco. Anytime I go on a diet and lose substantial weight, she wonders if I haven't done some irreparable damage and won't be able to stop losing weight. Mommy's also the type to check in daily. We speak almost every day by phone, even if it's just to see how my commute was to work. Of course, for me, it's easier to send a text, but she responds to text with a call. She calls nightly to see about her granddaughters. The only problem is she calls when we're in the middle of putting them down. ¿Y las mujeres? Ya, se durmieron. Mami, estamos en eso. Yo la llamo ahorita. Sí, mi, está bien. At this point, shame on me for even picking up. In my defense, though, she and my dad are at an age where I see the call and immediately I'm worried. I also can't send a message saying, la llamo un ratito, because she'll just call again. My greatest vulnerability is my children and what could happen to them outside of my care. Finding good childcare is an enormous challenge. Trusting them is no easy task, and reasonable pricing is unheard of. When our daughters started school, my parents volunteered to help with the drop-off and pickup. My wife and I greatly appreciate the assistance. The fact that they do it for free is a blessing. The folded laundry, though, is a cherry on top. Alas, some things come with family that one wouldn't get from hiring a stranger. Having my middle daughter point out that abuela dijo que esas galletitas son para la niña y no para ti, for an example, or when I go for a second serving of food and my oldest daughter exclaims, dice abuela que tú no tienes necesidad de servirte más de una vez. It seems like a bit much. In fact, it's absolutely unnecessary. She's trained my children to shame me in my own home. While I could do without the judgment, it truly is great to have her around the girls. She always tells me of their adventures walking to and from the bus stop. Meanwhile, the girls always fill me in on their after-school meals. Papi, abuela hizo puré de papa, pero el tuyo mejor. Abuela doesn't know her recipes have undergone some changes. I benefited from having parents who were present and caring that nurtured me into the man I am today. My mother wasn't as fortunate. She suffered through many difficult moments, but overcame unimaginable odds. Her nature as a protector has been to guide her children and ensure that they have what she did. For this, I am eternally grateful. Words will always fall short, but they're a start. Gracias, Mami.
Let me just say that this is exactly what I had in mind when I put out this call for submissions. I'm still like, every time I read it, I die crying. Like I'm just laughing the whole time.
I was laughing the whole time.
The whole time, right? I was sitting here editing, reading it over and over, and I just couldn't stop. It was just so funny, the whole thing. But it's like so sweet too. This one's one for the books. All right. Mo, you're up, and then we'll show the video from Luz.
So I actually told Yamberlie this yesterday that this is actually the first submission that I've done in years. I guess because of work and like writing sports stuff, a lot of the creative process kind of died in me a little bit. But when I saw the call for submissions for the Cuenticos, and I saw it was about mothers, the wheels just started turning, and the Mamiti came about. So I'll start reading from page 35. I grew up with her being distant and frigid, treating me more like a young friend she had to take care of instead of the golden child that Dominican mothers usually saw their sons as. She miratude me almost as much as she used my name. But there were signs of softness in her too, chinks in the anti-mamiti armor. She confided in me, she joked with me the way two homies might tease each other. She didn't encourage my non-traditional hobbies of drawing, reading, and writing. Still, she didn't shut them down either, not like others did. She was protective, maybe to a fault. My sister and I grew up in a rough project that was relatively devoid of children our age, so playing outside without supervision was a no-go. God forbid we tried to go out when the sun went down. You would think she was trying to shield us from vampires. "Tú estás loco," she would exclaim in my simple request to play baseball outside. My mother never even liked us to be babysat when she wasn't around. But while my sister found it annoying, her rebelliousness against my mother's iron fist ripped a chasm between them that never really has gone away. My cousins made fun of me because she was so strict and harsh and never let me sleep over or do hood shit with my friends. I didn't care. I might have gotten mad in the moment the way a kid might get upset with their parent for not letting them do something, but it was never a big deal to me. I almost preferred she be mean than overly affectionate. I welcomed the consequences instead of growing up thinking I could do no wrong. Of course, that could be years of brainwashing talking, but still. Shit, I took one listen to Amor de Madre by Aventura and said to myself, thank God Mami wasn't like that with me. And I had seen the results of the Mamiti firsthand in friends and family, sons who were either unprepared for life or who treated their mothers like servants. Because that's the gist of it, isn't it? My mother was nails, treating me more like a boxing trainer might treat a less than talented prospect than a doting mom to a beloved son. But not because she didn't like me or love me, but because she knew the world was a cold, dirty place. And the best way to prepare me for that was to give me a taste of it at home. Or maybe it was because she had been overly affectionate with my sister, only for my sister to ignore and take her for granted. Perhaps at that point, La Cachara said, I will not make the same mistake twice, not with him. Or maybe something happened in her youth that made her realize the more beneficial style of parenting is to keep your kids at arm's reach so that they don't get too clingy and not to shower them with love. Because when the world fucks them up, they'll be able to get back up, wipe the blood off their mouths, and smile. These are all thoughts I've had looking back on my youth. I don't know the true answer. My mother practices plausible deniability whenever I try to ask, hey, why are you so mean to me? Remember that Chappelle Show skit, I plead the fifth? That's her, except she says, que yo era mala contigo. Yo no me acuerdo de eso. With the same faux innocence a serial killer talking to a detective might have. I just know that when I struggled to find a job as a writer, depressed and hopeless, she was there in my iron will to keep moving forward. When I moved out and got my first place, she was there in all the navigational skills I had developed for the trials that come with being an independent adult. Even something as simple yet as necessary as cleaning my fucking bathroom now, she's there. I don't remember my mother ever kissing my face. Even after I moved out, I don't remember her giving me a non-New Year's Eve at midnight full-on hug. I heard tu babé more than something like mi hijo lindo. She'll ask, ¿Y tú no le has buscado un plato a Natasha, my girlfriend? Not the other way around. All the hallmarks of the mamiti that I know of now, she did the opposite. But I wouldn't trade La Cachara. I wouldn't trade the years of hilarious, borderline bully-like, cold, but made you feel like you were her equal mothering for anything. Because I love who I am today, and I wouldn't be that person without her and how she raised me. My mother broke the cycle, and I wouldn't trade any of it, not even for a lifetime of the mamiti.
I love it. I love it. It was so unexpected because when you put the mamiti, I thought it was going to be the typical Dominican mom spoiling her son, bringing him the plate of food, and your mom did the complete opposite.
Yeah,
props to her. I don't know. Props to her because you don't see that often.
Yeah, to this day, she'll come to my apartment and say, yo te voy a hacer un toyo porque tú me hiciste toyo a mí. And that's...
Yo, and the way she got you to clean the bathroom. Oh, you had to read that part. That was... No, I love that piece. De que the mamita, the anti-mamita you should have put. Okay, so now the video from Luz, and then we can get into discussing everybody's pieces and what you thought about it. You ready, Angie?
Give me a sec.
Okay. You guys have me cracking up the whole time. Doesn't like the Spanish parts make it even funnier? Just saying. Okay, never mind. Put the video.
Friends, my name is Luz Maria Mack. I want to share with you a piece that I wrote. It's called Eso te pasa por ser freca. If you want to read the complete excerpt, please go to Dominican Writers Association and purchase Dominican Moms Be Like. I don't know how my grandmother was as a child, but I knew Mama Luz, a kind, quiet, giving, stoic, a devout Catholic who many hoped to emulate. In all her wisdom, my mother named me after my saintly grandmother, someone I was nothing like. With time, I was given the nickname Luchi. I'm not entirely certain how I transitioned from Luz Maria to Luchi. Still, of one thing I was sure, it was bestowed upon me because of my ever curious, can't sit still, and a lot to handle ways. I've been told stories of all the messes I got into, like how I never learned to walk, just took off running one day. My mom said it was a sign from God, letting her know I would never slow down. I can still hear my mother calling me Sangana because I would run around barefoot, giving everything dirty with my black top feet. I love feeling the soft ground. I wanted to look like my mom on one occasion, so I grabbed her mascara and smeared it all over my forehead. My beautiful mother grabbed me and gently cleaned all the smeared black mascara smudges off my face. If that had happened now, I'm sure that moment would have been Instagrammable. But at that time, I received many unpleasant looks. One day, I ran up to my mother to get her attention and show her a small baby chick, captured and placed behind my back. Releasing the baby chick's beak, I opened my mouth to fool people into thinking it was me singing like a pio pio, as I called it. My aunt swayed on her rocking chair, looking the other way, begging me to let the poor baby chick go. Yeah, I was a curious one growing up in a place where curiosity was frowned upon and often referred to as jodiendo. I never heard any Dominican child be encouraged to explore. We were expected to sit still, help at home, and even follow the example of our elders. My mother found some of my troublesome acts humorous. Still, when it was time to take me to church, she would remind me that she was raising a good Christian girl. And let's face it, nowhere in the Bible do you hear good people behaving the way I did. Though there must have been a Dominican Bible, because older folks would unanimously exclaim, "Está bueno por ser freca," or "No sea frequita." So thank you so much for tuning in and letting me share with you my piece. Have a great day, and please make sure to check out Dominican Moms Be Like. Bye.
Why gotta be like that? Why they gotta take the freca ways out of us? I think that's what makes us, special. No, but Luz's essay, I swear, it was the end that got it for me. Like, as a woman, she's still dating her mother. That was emotional for me. So if you're seeing it, Luz, or if you see it later, you got to me. Okay, so I'm gonna open this up. If any of you guys have comments or questions for each other on each other's essays, and whoever's watching on YouTube, you can also ask questions. I'm gonna check it out, and yeah, let's talk about it. I'll ask the first one though. Did your mothers read this, and what did they say? So, anybody?
So I shared it around my family. My family's big, and they, communicate. Word travels quickly through WhatsApp. And una vecina, una amiga, like a family friend, she was like, "Me encantó todo." pero tú tenías que incluir eso de que tu familia recolectaron $12 una vez y pasando hambre. Like, they were very concerned about like me exposing the secrets. And I'm like, really? But so that was funny. But other than that, I'm like, wow, it was well received.
That was actually pretty relatable. I remember counting coins and then making arroz con huevo. I still make it. It's
Exactly.
Okay. It's no secret. We've all been there, done that. Any of you guys?
Yeah, my brother actually went ahead and translated the story for my mother. And I don't know what kind of justice he made for it, but ultimately she was really proud. She actually was really surprised because I think she knows little about the fact that I write to the extent that I write. She actually was more surprised by knowing that some of the things that the moments we've exchanged actually stuck with me. She's like, mira pa allá, yo de verdad no sabía que eso te tenía tanto impacto. And I'm like, more than you know, like a lot of impact. And so it was nice to be able to share that moment with her. I know she was really emotional about it. So it was good.
That's so sweet. And you don't really appreciate your mother until you have kids or you get older and you're like, oh my gosh, like she made sense, or like I appreciate that actually. I could have turned out so different if she wasn't on my case like that. So
Absolutely.
You guys want to say anything before I ask this question from Gloria Cristal?
So you can see from my story, my mother's, she has like kind of like serial killer personality traits sometimes. So I the story got published and I shared it on Instagram and all that, and I had friends and family hitting me up like, oh my God, this was great. Like I had family members who obviously grew up with my mother as well that were like, oh my God, they call her Amparo. So they're like, oh my God, this is exactly Amparo, whatever. I remember this, blah, blah. And then randomly, like in the afternoon, like on a Saturday, I get a phone call and it's her. And I pick up the phone. I'm like, what up? And she's like, yo estoy bravo contigo. I'm like, why? Why are you mad? Like, I like to troll my mother a little bit. And she's like, ¿por qué tú pusiste eso en el internet? And she doesn't really like understand the concept of like social media a lot, but she gets the gist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, esa historia que tú di que escribiste, que está todo el mundo viéndolo. ¿Para qué tú te vas a hablar eso? And I'm like, si tú supieras that everybody's on your side, like everyone's saying like, oh, that's how I want to raise my son so that they like independent and like they understand like what it takes, you know, like to be a mother and all this stuff. And to this day, she like, I'll show her the chapbook and she'll just be like, yeah, you get that. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, do you want to like just messing with her? I'm like, do you want to read it? She goes like, no, yo no quiero leer eso. Like she's very like, she's very proud. She's very reserved. And again, like when I to this day I bring, I'm like, remember when you tricked me into cleaning the tub? She's like, I don't remember that at all. You made that up. Like she'll like, she's like a gaslighting like champion. But again, it's like the relationship that I have with my mother, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's like having like a very older, slightly mean best friend who like fed you when you were little. So she's a character.
She definitely sounds like a trip. No, but what is it with Dominican moms too? Like, I never hit you. I never did that. I never put you to clean the bathroom. No, that didn't happen.
There's
I'm glad that was not just my mother.
I don't know if anyone's on TikTok, but there's a trend where the generation that has now grown up con pelas are now confronting their mothers on social media. So they'll film a video and say, mami, ¿tú te acuerdas de aquella vez que tú cogiste un alambre y me diste y qué sé yo qué? And you see the mom on video like, ¿de qué tú estás hablando?
No, for real. They
all of them, they all deny it. I was asking my friend the other day because now she has a daughter And I said to her, what does your mom think about your parenting style? Because she doesn't hate her daughter. She doesn't, she's like, when her daughter throws a tantrum, they do this counting exercise. And I'm like, your mom must think you're ridiculous.
No, but once they turn into
our parents,
no le den a un
búscame,
no le
y
griten.
te mandan, búscame la correa, por favor.
Oh my God.
And you better go and get that belt or whatever object it is that they want to hit you with. And she's like, yeah, my mom is just like, I was telling her the other day that she used to beat the crap out of me. And she was like, that she don't know where I got that from.
They're all the same.
Kind of like they black out or they repress those things. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Then they turn into la mother, que no le griten a los muchachos. Where did this person come from?
Yeah, I tell my kid all the time, you see that grandmother you got? That's not what I grew up with.
No.
I was like, that is absolutely not what I grew up with. Todo eso beso y abrazo. Y dije, ¿cómo tú estás? Y que sé yo qué. Like, my mom barely spoke to us. Like, all she did was order us around. And I mean, I love her to death, and I understand why she was like that, right? So I don't judge her. But, I'm like, my mom wasn't like that. And he's like, what are you talking about? Abuelita is so nice.
It's crazy how similar Dominican moms, like they all share in the same behaviors and experiences, because in each and every one of these stories, I saw a piece of my mom and I was like, yep, Ada, there she is. You got fooled into cleaning a tub and I got tricked into sweeping, because she said like, mira, qué bien barre esa muchacha, mira cómo ella agarra todo ese polvo. Tú la tienes que ver con una escoba. Tú la tienes que ver. Ajá. Igualitas son toditas.
Cindy, if I may, your story is actually my favorite one in the book. Like as you were describing Doña Ada, I just kept thinking like, oh my God, like I feel like her and my mother would have either gotten along very well or been like sworn enemies because they were the same person. Like, there's like no in between.
Probably gotten along very well. My mother's very amicable. She's actually like the life of the party. It's a little scary, but at home she was crazier. So it was, you saw one side of her in front of people, and then at home you're like, all right, don't get her mad. She might trip up. But she was, yeah, she's a character for sure. She's great.
Henry, you said already what your mom thought about this?
So, like I mentioned before, my mom is really good at rolling with jokes. So when the first piece, the unedited piece, I actually read that to her on Mother's Day. And she was sitting on the couch y eso era muerte la risa. Sí, yo me acuerdo que yo abrí la ventana y le grité así. So, like, she was just cackling even at parts where I felt like that didn't require a laugh. So I don't know if she was just kind of trying to appease me. But I also read it last month at the open mic, and I brought her with me, and she ate it up. Like, you would have thought that she was the one up there, like reading it. It was a performance. So
she was a celebrity now.
Ella salió de ahí, ella que pensaba que ella era Miriam Cruz.
Because now she's the protagonist of the story.
But what captured me of Mo's story was that, like, the difference between them, right? So I'm sure there's plenty of things that they would have in common, but like, for speaking from a male perspective, like, the mothers are usually swarming over you, and the mamita is definitely, I'm guilty of it. Like, to this day, like, there's times where my wife might tell me something, I'm like, oh, but my mom used to do blah, 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 blah. It's like, yo, you're 40. Like, your mom, that's over. Like, you do that. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of like the way that my mom used to do that. So it's tough to shake that. I mean, I'm a mama's boy for life.
No, I hear you, because, like, admittedly, it's only been recently that I was like, oh, she was cool. She wasn't that bad. Because, like, I remember growing up, I would say, damn, like, why wasn't she like this with me? Like, why she don't give me a hug? Like, why she don't, you know, like check up on me? Like, my girlfriend's parents are so loving and doting, and to this day, we're in our 30s and they're still like, oh, mi niña, and like kiss on the cheek. And that's like, for me, I might as well be watching like a wildlife documentary, because I'm like, wow, I didn't grow up with this. Like, where was this? Like, to this day.
Oh, it's like, I want that.
Yeah, like I'm
How
like
come my
damn,
mom doesn't give me hug and kisses?
yeah, like so I'll like go on vacation and she'll like, okay, está bien. Like she'll give me like a pat on the back. I'll come
As a
back.
kid,
she'll be
you don't
like,
come back, Mo.
yeah, like
Se cae el avión or whatever, God forbid.
yeah, yeah, and so like it's now that I'm an adult and I see how that parenting style has turned me into who I am, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe she was onto something there, but I will still probably hug my kids more than she hugged me.
It's tough to shake that. The phrases too, like with in Angelina's story, that got me, because there's tons of times where my mom would be like, ay, yo tengo una hambre, bebe agua, eso no es hambre que tú tienes, eso es sed. I'm like, what does one thing have to do with the other? She's likely right, but like those phrases, they never die.
They never
But do you use them on your kids now?
100%.
Not yet, not yet, not yet.
There's some questions in the YouTube
Yeah, I
live.
was just gonna say that. Let me jump in and go through the YouTube now. There's a lot of comments. Everyone was like dying laughing too here, guys. Oh, hey Harry, I remember you. I got you on Insta. He says, hey Mo. What is it? They're from Corona. Okay. Definitely could relate. Where's that question? Okay. How did it feel revisiting memories to write your pieces? Anybody?
Well, for me, I just made myself laugh a lot. Like just going back and writing. Like, I knew I was gonna write the tub one, because to this day I bring that. Like, I have friends that are like, you know, they're just now getting their own places and you know, figuring out what it's like to be an independent adult, and they like ask me questions like, oh, you know, like, ¿cómo se lava la ropa? O esto que el otro. And I'm like, shit, I know how to do this when I was like 9 years old. Like, I already knew. And you know, like her like making fun of me when I used to be chubby when I was little, like all that stuff, like that was like low-key traumatic. Like now is like, I look back and I'm like, wow, she was a trip, like hilariously, like everything had like, it was kind of like she had like a double entendre style of parenting, where it on the surface level would be like very mean, very cold, but then if you looked a little deeper, it's like, oh, that's what she was trying to get to. So it was funny, but it was also like really enlightening to look back.
And someone here asks, have you ever wished someone else to be your mother? If so, why? How do you overcome those feelings? That's not. Who's gonna answer that?
That's a deep question. That's a serious one. I don't know. I don't think I've ever wished to have another mother. I think we've definitely have had our hard times, because we're both very like, right? Like going head to head it's always been a thing. We always go head to head. But then when we come together, it's like nothing's ever happening. Like I don't even know how to describe it. We fight hard, but we love hard, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I think if anything, I've grown to understand, similar to your experience, Mo, like I've grown to understand that a lot of the ways that my mom was what she knew, what she grew up with, what she made of her experiences. And at this point, I have the privilege really to take that experience and continue to further that for my daughter and for, you know, any of the generations to come after me. Like, I'm grateful for that. Do I think that my mother was perfect? No, but I think that's what made for a really great experience, because had she been, then I'd have nothing to take from it. You know, so those are my thoughts.
I'm gonna take that with me, what you just said. Like, That just shows life lessons right there. Wow, that's a nice way to look at it. Okay, vamos a seguir. What else is here? Someone said that's not just for Dominican moms, that's for Colombian moms too. Let's just put it Latina moms, right? Let's just put that out there. Is there anything your mom said to you as a child or did that you now understand and fully adopted? I think that goes with what you said, Cindy. You take what they said and how they treated you and make a lesson out of it. Anyone else want to comment on that one?
So like I was thinking about this comment, and whenever, like, as a second generation or like a first generation student, second generation Dominican here in the US, I think about like the migration, the process that, you know, that their journey and what they took from DR and what they left there, and like the new life that they created while here. And I try to be patient with them and think about like their mentality, like the historical life that they lived versus the one here. And I try to give them grace, give my mom grace. I think that's one of the things that I have taken.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't see any more questions, but I'm just gonna say, I think it was safe at this point for everyone to write about their moms because it's not coming from a place of like resentment or anything. You've already processed whatever you grew up with, and now you can laugh about it with your mother. So I mean, I feel like that was a good experience to put out there. And yeah, so does anyone have any comments or questions about like what went on during the editing process? What was your experience with that, with submitting to the Cuenticos and being published by Dominican writers?
I probably started writing my piece. I wrote probably 3 pieces, like started them 3 times. And every time I was like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. I'm going to come back to it. And eventually this piece came out. I was like, I think it's usually, there's a gut check whenever I'm writing. I'm like, if it doesn't feel right in my spirit, it can't go out because something's not adding up. But it felt good. It felt almost like a release the minute that it was written. And then to have you read it and edit it was like, oh, this is official. Someone else is reading it and like editing my work. I'm kind of nervous, but that's exciting. This is like, it feels official. Okay, let's do it. I felt good about it. So thank you for the experience.
Thank you for the essay. Gosh, I just want everybody to read it. That's how much I love this. Like these essays, I love them so much. I just want everyone to read them. That's how good they are. Like, thank you for sending them, guys. It was like such a fun project to work on, by the way.
If I can add on to like what Cindy was saying, for me, it was the same way. Like I second guessed myself a lot. So like one of the things was with the first Cuenticos, which was about the Dominican matriarch, when I saw the prompt, like I was on the train and I literally wrote the entire essay on like a 45-minute train ride. Yo estaba ahí, era vuelto loco. No lie, hasta lloré. And then when I got home and then I read it and I was like, nah. This is not it. Like I can't share this. So then I wrote something else and I sent it out to you, and that didn't get accepted. And then when I read it, I was like, it didn't sound authentic. Like that wasn't me. And that's where like the disconnect was. So then when this one came around, I was like, no. Let's just joke around. Let's tell the stuff that we found funny when we were kids. And it's easier, like you just connect right away. And I think it's the same with every single story. Like when you read it and like you hear bits of either your mother or your father or an aunt or whatever that you had, like it sinks in, and that's what makes it pleasurable, and that's what's really rewarding about the collection.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me it was a very healing experience too. I started writing it like towards like finals season, like last semester, and I was like, let me take a break and see if I can write something up. And it just started flowing, and it was very healing. I cried también in the middle of a cafe. I was like, oh wow, this is really good. And I think that the prompt was perfect because it was like, okay, like that I had to write about my mom. And it's like, how else would I pay like homage? Like, honor a ella. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm the one who knows her the best. Who else will write this story? And it felt like very like empowering for me to write about my mom and, you know, my aunts as well.
I have a question. How many of you have been published before? You, Mo? Well, in creative fiction, and Mo, you're a sports writer, right, Mo?
Yeah, well, the editor, and I used to write sports, but I started fiction writing when I was like 14 because some English teacher I had, call it like 12, because some English teacher I had me dañó la vida because he said we were doing like short story exercises, I guess you would call it. And I wrote something and he totally ruined my life when he said, shit, you need to pursue like writing, like this and this. And that just totally ruined everything because
Why ruin?
because I spent so many years with nobody giving me an ego check. So like I you know, he said that to me. I started writing. I got published at like 17, 18. So I was like on top of the world. I was like, oh, this, you know, the next Harry Potter is going to be mine. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be a millionaire, billionaire, whatever. I get to college. I major in creative writing. One of the professors says, very, very eloquently, he says, you have something very rare. You have a writing voice. You have to nurture it. So basically it was just, you know, the mamita I didn't get from my mother was given to me by everyone else. So I started thinking I was the hottest shit on earth. And then life was like, tú crees que tú eres una vaina. And I like couldn't get a job. I started doing like every non-writing job ever because you got to hustle. And then, you know, like life is crazy because like I was at a very low point and then it just catapulted up with the Yahoo job and everything. And unfortunately, because the job is very creative based, it's very, I don't want to call it demanding, but I'm so like invested in it that when I'm wrapped up, it's hard to have any creative juice left to write my own stuff. So when I've been following the Dominican Writers Association for some time now, and, you know, I see the prompts and stuff and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I, you know, keep scrolling because I'm like, oh, ya no me queda pila pa escribir nada. And then this one came up and it was just like a light bulb turned on. And I felt that all those familiar feelings of when you're writing something that is real to and true to yourself. And, you know, ever since then, I have started writing again. I have felt the energy again, the juices flowing. So yeah, like I got published so many years ago and then I put it aside because of life. But this and this series and getting the submission accepted has kind of just like been a reset. And I hope it leads to something else.
Nice. I'm so happy to hear that. Life will humble you. That is correct. But aside from that, all of you, I know Luz writes all the time. She's constantly writing children's book and she rarely tackles adult books. So I'm glad that she submitted for this essay. And Amaris is constantly writing, but she has a hard time calling herself a writer. Do you guys struggle with that? Do you guys struggle with calling yourself a writer, especially when you've taken these long breaks like Mo has, or you know, or never even giving yourself the opportunity to submit to a literary journal or a magazine? Does the imposter syndrome come up and you have to, you know, kick it in the butt and say, I'm doing this anyway?
How much time do we have for this session? Because that's going to be like another 3 hours.
Keep it short, Cindy. So yes. All the time,
I feel like imposter syndrome doesn't, it's like a necessary evil. I hate to think of it, but it is a necessary evil because you constantly have to come up against it and like fight it. imposter syndrome is my biggest enemy and my biggest friend most of the time. In the last few weeks, I've taken a break from writing, but I feel like it's almost like the slow ramp up to when, the content starts to flow again. Mo said something that triggered a memory for me of like, I've experienced in that imposter syndrome, I've experienced fear of like, are the stories going to run out, right? Like, is the well going to dry up and I'm going to have no other words to share and everything's done? And just when I think it's done, it's like someone cracked open the la pompa and now the water's just flowing freely all over the place. So I think it's just a matter of stepping back, really assessing what's true and what's a lie, because imposter syndrome will tell you, right? We'll tell you realities, right? Truths of like, you might fail, you might not succeed, but at the same time, you have to be able to separate those things and take a risk, because with risk comes reward. But on and on. We can go on about this.
Thank you for sharing. But I'm glad that you overcome that when you have to, and that you give yourself the opportunity to submit your work. As I feel that as long as you're living, there's stories to write. You could write a story about that printer behind you. Right? You could write a story about the window in that room that you're in, right? Anything and everything you could create a story out of. What about you guys?
For me, like I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot as well. And I think that my fear is like publishing and then, publishing the first draft and being one and done, and then people like finding mistakes and, everything. And I think that like, that's what trips me up. And I think going through this process with Yamberlie was very, like, it was great, because it made me realize that, not all stories are perfect the first time around, right? It needs a lot of editing, and just like emphasizing the editing process really helped ease a lot of nerves and stress. And I'm like, okay, like I'm writing like stuff everywhere on different platforms, like on my notebooks, on my notes app, on sticky notes. And I'm like, now I'm thinking about ways that I can concise everything. But then the fear is like, oh my God, like, do I have to release everything like thematically, or like, I'm thinking about like also, because I'm also a reader, and I'm like, I want to write a novel one day, but like, how long is that going to take? And like, should I be a poet? Should I be a novel writer? Like, those are all thoughts that goes in like a children's book. Like, I'm writing a children's book, and I started the process, and I'm like midway with my editor, and I just left that like a year ago. And I'm like, because I have other like scholarly work to work on. So I think it's just like anxiety, like all around that. Yeah, shout out to Yamberlie, that like affects me. And also like, I guess like it affects the way I identify myself as a writer as well.
Yeah, just affirmation, guys. Stand in front of your mirror, just be like, I am a writer. I write. I will continue to write until you have that in your head, because your stories resonate with people. They touch people. They also trigger people, right? Let's be honest. Yeah, our stories matter. And sometimes people think that their story isn't significant, that nobody's going to care to read it. Why am I publishing this? And then you have that one person who your story touches, and that's enough, right? Not everyone needs to like and love your work. You just need that one person to say, this did it for me. And if you look at the comments under this YouTube video, you see how many people related to your stories, how many people were touched and are commenting and are happy with this chapbook. So thank you so much to all of you for believing in yourself, letting go of that fear, and submitting. And just to let you all know, I never see these stories. So I'm not the one that is accepting them, just in case. I do let people know that, because some folks are like, oh, I know Angie, that's why I got published. No, you didn't. because I do not read your stories. I don't. I find out now and when I'm putting together the manuscript. So basically because I have very little time to read. But Yamberlie is the one who manages all of that, who reads everything and makes sure that you are a right fit for the chapbook. So before we close, I wanted to make one announcement. Si lo encuentro aquí. And I'm sorry, give me a sec. Let me find this. Dios mío. Yamberlie, you could take over while I search for this.
So I was saying, I was waiting for the announcement too. I'm like, what are we talking about? No, who was it that mentioned like, oh, about okay, we were talking about the imposter syndrome. I was thinking, I'm like, oh my God, sometimes I don't even want to read the chapbooks. I'm like, oh my God, what if I left like a comma out of place or something? I get so scared. I'm like, what if I missed something? But I don't know when you guys were reading it, right? It came out okay, right? So
I can relate, Yamberlie. Being an editor, it's a nightmare when like a writer hits you back and is like, hey, is this a typo there or something? But unfortunately, like what has helped me is like to look at it like scientifically sometimes, where it's like your eyes and your mind kind of play tricks on you, where your mind remembers what a word is supposed to look like, and because of that you might miss a typo because it's just one letter, right? And your mind goes, oh, that's this word. So, and you just keep moving. So I 100% empathize with you in that struggle.
So reassuring. I don't see it like until it's printed out in front of me. I'm just like, oh my God, how did I miss that? Or if you guys email me, who was it? Which one of you guys emailed me? I was like, oh my God, yeah, give me a second. I'm gonna fix it right now. And mind you, I read it like 20 times before I even send it to Angie. Like, I'm just like, what did I miss? I know I'm gonna miss something. But I mean, it's fun reading the essays. It's just making sure that there's no mistakes.
I was going to say about the imposter syndrome. I had shared with Angie before that I wrote a piece for another journal and they accepted it. And when they sent me the email with the acceptance, the first thing that came to my mind was like, esto que yo no tuviera mucha opción este mes. Like immediately, like I just knock it down. And then my wife was like, but why do you think like that? I was like, oh, I'm just putting it out there. But and meanwhile, you read, like I read the piece and I loved it, but immediately it's just something else had to be at play. Like it had to be luck, or they saw my name and they liked it. It could never be that they actually liked the work. And battling that is incredibly difficult.
I can just imagine Henry emailing them and telling them, are you sure? You don't want to double check? I think you made a mistake.
That was Hector Sanchez, not Henry Suarez. You messed up.
No. Come on, guys. Don't do that to yourselves. Do not.
So many of the contributors have said that. And when I think about it, I'm just like, but I loved it. As soon as I'm like, what? Like, you really doubted this piece? Like, it's shocking sometimes that to hear that.
Y que diablo, except they metieron la pata.
So guys, okay, I found the info here. So I wanted to say that Yamberlie and I spent a lot of time applying for grants, apart from creating the programming for the Cuenticos project. And we want to make the announcement that this project was funded in parts by Humanities New York with support from the National Endowment of Humanities. So they covered the expenses for publishing the chapbook and also for me to, cover editing fees and whatnot. So that was the announcement. So going forward, the DWA Cuenticos will include the logo of the grant because they've been they're going to start funding the project. So we could end now. If anyone has any
Announce that
last,
the next
any
comical
last-
chapbook is gonna come out too after this one.
yes, the Sion Papi is
We're
being
getting through that one.
getting the final mano de gato
Yes.
from Yamberlie. So stay tuned for that. We had 20 writers submit to Sion Papi, and I was so happy because usually people don't talk about their dads.
Yeah.
I find that so weird. Like, I do this call for submission every year and we barely get anything for fathers. Now,
it's
you
because we
mentioned
included the
moms
good
and
and the
people
bad.
run to talk about their moms, but never about your dad. So
For the things I write about are about my dad.
thankfully, we had 20 writers submit to Sion Papi. And, you know, Sion Papi doesn't necessarily need to be this loving conversation or relationship with your dad, but, you know, you could talk about whatever type or lack of relationship
that one.
you have with your
The
father.
stereotypes.
Right. So, do we have any last comments in the YouTube video before we close out, Yamberlie?
Congratulations, don't stop writing. Your story needs to be
Yeah,
heard.
people were watching the live and going on the website to buy the book.
Oh,
Okay, and just to let you guys know, the book is also in libraries uptown, and I'm working to include it in other libraries in Brooklyn and Queens as well. And it's also in bookstores. So you could send people to go to their local bookstore, and if the bookstore doesn't have it, just tell them to order it and they'll order it. But for example, Word Up carries it if you're in uptown Manhattan, and also around 40,000 retailers.
find it.
I
Just
said
find it.
1,000. That's correct. I said 1,000, Cindy.
Find it somewhere.
Cindy's like, ¿qué? 40 qué? What? Yes. So you likely, you know, maybe this book will become a bestseller in India or Canada or somewhere. So
Imagine.
but you know, my goal is to have our stories read in schools for teachers to pick them up and include them in their curriculum. We are working into creating a DWA Cuenticos for educators as well. That is going to be led by one of my board members. So yeah, you know, stay tuned, subscribe to our website so you can receive the announcement, follow us on social media, or any platform that you love or you prefer, and, you know, stay tuned for the announcements. Yamberlie, thank you so much for all your hard work. Yamberlie, I know this is your baby, and I always want you to remember that this is your baby. All I do is publish it, but you're the one, you know, creating it and putting in all the work and working with the writers, and I've yet to hear anything negative. Everyone loves Yamberlie's, you know, nurturing editing process.
Nurture. I like that. I'm gonna use that.
Like the mom holding your hand and be like, ven, arregla eso ahí. Cambia esto aquí.
They are my babies. I'm very, very proud. I get this.
Yes, Yamberlie is gonna have a whole library of her chapbooks.
Oh yes, yeah. I plan on it. So
All right.
I want, you know, you guys should definitely keep submitting. I want more. I just
Any last words, Yamberlie, before
you.
we close out?
No, I think that's it.
Oh, you don't have, okay. All right, guys. Thank you everyone for tuning in tonight, for everyone who was so lively in the chat, leaving your comments. We appreciate you for viewing and supporting our Dominican writers. Please continue supporting the Dominican writers. You could do that by making a donation to our website, by purchasing any of our items, purchasing any of the books that we publish. And so, you know, and even if you don't want to spend money, just sharing and reposting is enough. Okay, so thank you once again, and good night until next time.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Yamberlie. Thank you.